You're welcome back to the Gavel. The Senate on Wednesday, March 13, began the debate on the 2019 budget, and we saw lawmakers ask the federal government to be cautious with its borrowing plans. Now, some of the senators say they are worried about Nigeria's debt profile and warn that the federal government must ensure that the country's debt to GDP ratio does not go beyond acceptable levels.
The Senate finally started work on the 2019 budget. The House of Representatives had passed the 2019 budget through second reading before the commencement of the 2019 general elections.
Mr. President, with your permission,
the Senate Majority Leader opened the debate on the 8.3 trillion naira budget with a capital expenditure of 2.03 trillion naira and 4.04 trillion naira recurrent expenditure.
The planned expenditure for 2019 is lower than the approved 2018 Appropriation Act of the figure of 9.12 trillion, and that is a decrease by 3%. The budget deficit is projected to decrease to 1.86 trillion, and that is about 1.33% of our GDP in 2019 from 1.95 trillion projected for 2018. And that is about 1.73% of estimated GDP. This reduction is in line with this administration's plans to progressively reduce budget deficit and borrowings. About 89% of the deficit, which represents 1.6 trillion naira, will be financed through new borrowings, while about 210 billion naira is expected from the process of privatization of some public enterprises.
Some of the assumptions of the budget include oil production estimate of 2.3 million barrels per day, an exchange rate of 305 naira to a dollar. But some legislators have reservations about some of the budget assumptions as well as the debt burden to the country.
We are within the sustainable debt limit as far as the records are concerned. But borrowing should simply be on areas of extreme need, and that will be of more importance to us. Mr. President, the allocation made to Ministry of Interior, which raised up to 569 billion, should address critical infrastructure as far as the immigration service, the customs, the prisons, and the civil defense are concerned. Over the years, we have seen the progressive deterioration of facilities in the Nigerian prisons, the immigrations, and civil defense. These funds should not simply be about servicing the salary expenditures of those agencies, but all need to be done to upgrade the facilities of these agencies under this ministry.
Even though my colleague, Senator Jibril, seemed to be comfortable with those two assumptions, particularly the oil price and production, I can say I am not comfortable with that. It is better for us to have a positive variance than a negative variance in our budget processes. Take the case of the oil price. We are taking $60 per barrel, the benchmark. Considering the volatility of this very product and the market, it seems unrealizable that we will be dependent on $60 per barrel. Tomorrow it may get down to 40%, and the system will be put under panic. Why not we come up with a two-digit difference between the market price and the budget benchmark? That will give us enough flexibility in coping with any volatility that we may face in the market. Again, Mr. President, we have been projecting 2.3 million barrels per day production for some time. For 2019, we're having 2.3 million barrels. But have we been able to achieve this over the years? The answer is no. Then why are we sticking to this figure when we know that we're not going to arrive at that? There are no techniques, strategies we have put into the system that will make us achieve what we have budgeted for or what we have assumed. Therefore, it makes greater sense that we will come down, even if it is 2 million barrels per day, and project on that. And if we produce more than that, then it gives us a positive variance that we can easily manipulate.
Mr. President, as I speak, there is no longer foreign investment in Nigeria. And I announce to you, Mr. President, with all these indices and yardstick, by the end of May, except there is a miracle, dollar will rise to 500 naira to $1. Because we have depleted our foreign reserve, we are a chartered borrowing nation.
The Senate's Deputy Majority Leader is not worried about the country's debt profile, while Senator Alin Dume wants lawmakers to address the economic challenges in the country.
Considering the population of Nigeria, considering our human resources, we are grossly borrowing, under borrowing. And that is the fact, sir. So that fear of sustainability of our debt appears to be misplaced when you juxtapose that to our population, our resources, both human and capital. But I think there is one other aspect that appears to be missing in the budget, which the National Assembly should look at. If you look at the framework of the budget, it is intended to do what has never been done before. That is to target what we call even redistribution of income. So virtually every other person who has opportunity to queue into this budget will have one thing or the other to do to be able to get some level of sustenance by putting his best.
The principles of this budget. The budget is already before us. We as senators of this republic, the Senate leader has captured it in the first page of presentation, showing concern for the high level of debt borrowing. And now what we need to do is to find solution to this thing and suggest how to the way forward. We are not here to complain. We are not here to criticize. We are supposed to discuss and provide the way forward.
Some lawmakers point out other sectors of the economy in need of urgent intervention.
Increasingly, we've deviated from the financial year proposed by the Constitution. The Constitution says in Section 318 that the financial year is the period of 12 months from 1st January of any beginning of every year, which means it's usually between 1st of January and 31st of December, or any other time as may be prescribed by the National Assembly. Over the last 4 years, the average period for which budget has been passed in this Assembly has always been in May, and I believe it's a very dangerous trend. We must have to go back and see how we can go back to the financial year prescribed by the Constitution, because I know that those who prescribed that period must have thought it twice at the time they did that. And the implication of what is happening now is that the executive consecutively or consistently have brought the budget quite late, usually towards the end of December or shortly before we leave for break in December. And that makes it impossible for the National Assembly to consider this until sometime into January. And this year has even been worse because we have to go into election. So the implication, therefore, is that budget will be delayed, and then even the implementation starts quite late.
Not much work has been done on the 2019 budget, particularly in the Senate 3 months into the year, as legislators gave priority to elections. The previous year's budget was passed late in the year in the midst of squabbles between the executive and the legislature, and there are concerns that unless the 2019 budget process is given expedited action, it may suffer the same fate of late passage.
Now, this is where we draw the curtains on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us, and see you again next week.